Hello, it's Melinda from Scrapbooking and Craft, and I just thought I'd bring you a quick video today with some Christmas cards. These have been a long time in the making. I started them last year and I finally glued them down this year. Yeah. So these are using some of my chipboard pieces. I do have a process video of these, putting them together, except not actually sticking them down, coming up after this short intro. So these are using some of my chipboard pieces and the Reject Shop Christmas range from last year. So this one's got my Holly Jolly Christmas and one of my Christmas wreaths on it. I've used a lot of heat embossing powders to give these a colour. This one just has a little bit of clear heat embossing powder on it. So they're all 6x6 cards. And I think they've come up rather cute. I've die cut a circle out of the back of that paper and then backed it with the red paper. This one's one of my Christmas trees. It's got glittery embossing powder on it. I did put it through an embossing folder, but unfortunately you can emboss the chipboard that we sell through an embossing folder and you get a slight impression, but unfortunately the embossing powder took over the impression, but that's okay. Learnt lesson, don't do both of those at once. So we've got Magic of Christmas and a little holly piece. These little holly pieces, some of these pieces I have cut into smaller pieces, so don't hesitate to cut our chipboard up. If it's not the right shape, you don't have to use it as it comes out of the package. A lot of these are a bit shiny as well. Here's another one with dark green embossing powder on it and just a little saying. So I like to layer my chipboard pieces under flowers and different things just to hide the ends of it so they look like they're growing out of something, not just sort of stuck on in mid-air. So I've got a Merry Christmas here. So this is where I've cut up a few pieces. These three pieces here were attached in a holly sprig and they weren't working the way, and actually cut them into 4 pieces. They weren't working the way it was, so I just cut them up. So don't hesitate to do that. And this is one of our vine flourishes and one of our Merry Christmases. It's a bit hard to show because they've got shininess on them, and all these little die cuts are from last year's Reject Shop Christmas range. As I said, I started these last year and sort of didn't get them finished before Christmas, put them aside, finally found them when I was cleaning and thought I'd better stick them down. So again, one of my Merry Christmases, another one of my sprigs, and one of my holly pieces as well. So I love this piece for Christmas. It looks like a piece off a fir tree. And this one is Joy to the World. As I look at this one, it looks like this panel is stuck on crooked, but I couldn't work out. It looks like it's crooked, but I don't know whether it is crooked or whether it's just me. And then I've got this half tree here, which I actually cut in half, so the other half's for another day. And this tree looks like it's about to be cut down. So I love to layer the chipboard pieces with die cuts and different things, so they're not floating. I don't mind the words floating, but I do like to connect my other pieces. So these are just some fun, quick cards that I whipped up with some of our chipboard. I love heat embossing on the chipboard because it gives you a nice shiny look and it's very quick. You don't have to prep the chipboard at all. So there's 6 quick cards that I did using pattern papers, die cuts and some chipboard pieces. So without further ado, let's get on to the process video. So let's get into it and make these cards. So the first thing I'm doing is heat embossing all the pieces. I don't really know what pieces I'm going to use on what cards, so I just grabbed some gold, silver, green heat embossing powders and just decided to heat emboss a few pieces. When you're heat embossing chipboard, if you're using an ink pad, you need to have a dedicated ink pad to chipboard. The chipboard is cut on a laser machine, so it's actually burnt. So there's a little bit of charcoal on the edges that can transfer to your clear embossing ink pad. So I had a really old one, so I have designated that to my chipboard embossing ink pad. The ink pad will get a little black with the bit of the charcoal, but it doesn't sort of transfer back onto the piece, if that makes sense. So this one I'm just doing twice. This is a glitter and clear embossing powder mix. So sometimes I do need to do it twice just to get a overall coverage, but that's the embossing powder, nothing to do with the chipboard. When the embossing powder is hot, you can sprinkle some directly on top of it. You don't have to re-ink, which makes it handy. I like to keep my embossing powders in these little, I call them Chinese containers, that's what Chinese takeaway comes in, just so it's easy to hold the chipboard piece over the top and scoop it. I do this for my main embossing powders that I use a lot and that I have a lot of. So it just makes it easier, and just heating them up between. So I have sped all this process up 3 times. I wish I worked this fast, just so it's not so repetitive for yourself. So you can do the words as well. You do need to be a little gentle with the words because some of them are quite fragile, especially this piece here. I'm not concerned if I don't get 100% coverage on the chipboard. If I have little bits here and there missing, it adds to the distressed look. So I'm not too concerned about that. Embossing chipboard, you don't have to prep the chipboard in any way. Most embossing powders are opaque, so they do dropped it in the embossing powder. Most embossing powders are opaque, so they cover up the colour of the chipboard really well. One particular piece I just put a little bit of clear on, and it looks really cool in the brown or a neutral colour. So just finishing them off, that white powder there is actually clear powder when you melt it. So just putting a clear gloss. I like to do that on a lot of my pieces. So embossing powders are clear, like shiny. The glitter one, because it's a mix of glitter, it doesn't have that shine on the top, so I do like to do that. So just tipping this one into a bowl. I don't actually have it into a container. So this one's more of a thick, ultra thick embossing powder. So it's a bit more chunky than the other one, so it doesn't stick as well to the ink. You don't necessarily need to use ink. I could have used like a matte gel medium or a liquid glue to put on top of the chipboard. I just find with the finer pieces that the ink pad handles them a little bit better. You don't get stuff gooping up your holes, if that makes sense. So as you can see, I'm using a heat tool. So it's important to use a heat tool when heat embossing, not a hairdryer. It may look like a hairdryer. What you're wanting is you're wanting heat to come out, but not air. So little granules of powder are stuck to your piece before you heat it up. And all embossing powders are plastic. So basically when they melt into like a shiny glaze. So all the little crystals are gone. So you just got to be able to stick the crystals to your to the surface you're wanting to put it on with either the ink pad or the glue. If you use a hairdryer, you got to blow those crystals off before they have a chance to melt and stick onto your piece. So I'm making 6 cards in this video, so I do go through a fair amount of chipboard. So they're nice and just showing the difference between the glitter and the normal one. So this one I believe I'm going to do gold, so I've got some gold embossing powder. When I'm embossing, when I have smaller amounts, I just tip it all over the chipboard piece. As you can see there, I'm working on with 2 pieces of just A4 copy paper. One piece is to add my ink to, and the second piece is to tip the powder on. Now, if I was trying to use the one piece of paper and I've got straight ink on that piece of paper, my embossing powder will get wasted because it'll stick to it. So that's why I have the second one just for the powder, and you can just fold your paper and stick it back into the jar. Some finer chipboard pieces like to run all over the table when you heat emboss them because there is a little bit of air coming out, but not much. So that's why I'm holding it with the tweezers. Just be careful because the tweezers can get a bit hot. I apologise, it's a bit hard to see in this video. This video was filmed 12 months ago, so I started these in Christmas 2019, but never finished them and put them together. Life just got in the way. So I decided it was time to stick the bits together and finally finish these cards. It's a great thing about scrapbooking and card making. If you don't get them quite finished, you can tuck them away and bring them out when you can. This is another one of our word pieces, Holly Jolly Christmas. As I said, this embossing powder is a bit more chunky. It's probably not ideal for this particular process. It's sort of a thick one. Embossing powders come in several different grades, so you can get like ultra fine, which is really small granules. You get sort of a medium, and then you can get a chunky. The chunkier ones are probably best for pieces of chipboard that have larger areas, but I tend to break all the rules and make it work. do apologise about the wiggling. I do have to get a new camera set up. I love this gold one. This particular gold one, unfortunately the company no longer exists. It's a beautiful, it's not like a really shiny gold, it's like a flat gold, if that makes sense, and it doesn't go on completely, and it's really, really nice on the raw chipboard colours. So if you didn't have heat embossing powders and you want to make some of these cards, you can just paint your chipboard pieces. The reason I like heat embossing powder is it does give it a glossy look, but that glossy look can also be it can also be achieved by putting many other products on top of your chipboard, like a liquid dimensional magic or a gloss matte medium. I like heat embossing powders because A, they give you a bit of a shiny look, and B, I've got tons of them to use up. It's my excuse, and it's quick and easy. So it doesn't take long. So when you're heat embossing, you want to start from one end and slowly move to the other end. You don't want to wave that heat embossing tool around, because you need to get the piece of chipboard and the plastic granules hot in one area before you move on. You need to get them up to a certain temperature. Not quite sure what the temperature is, but it's hard to see in the video, but you will see it in real life if you do heat embossing. You'll start to see the crystals turn into sort of a melted mess. Don't stick your fingers into the melted heat embossing powder, because it is very hot and it's like melted plastic. Or it is melted plastic. So just adding some more, and you can see that page was the one I was inking on, and you can see the heat embossing powder sticking to the bottom of the page, which is a bit of a waste. I didn't grab out my other sheet. Sometimes I forget. So now I've just grabbed my Cuttlebug embossing, a Cuttlebug cut and die embossing machine. I grabbed one of my embossing folders, so I thought I'd add a bit more texture, because this tree had a lot more sort of blank space on it. I decided to run it through an embossing folder. Unfortunately, when the embossing worked really, really well, so all that chipboard can go through your embossing folders. You just have to do it a couple of times. You don't get a really deep impression as much as on paper, but you do get a slight impression. Unfortunately, when I put the embossing powder on top, we lost the embossing folder impression, but that's a lesson learned. Don't do that again. So just using a distress ink pad there to add a bit of green under this embossing powder. As I said, this one is a glitter and a clear embossing powder mixed together, so I wanted the tree to be really, really green. So I added a green ink to the chipboard piece first. The other pieces I didn't, and you can sort of see flecks of the natural colour of the wood, sort of the crafty colour coming through, which was fine for the pieces, but my tree, I wanted green, green, green. So you can actually heat emboss with the Distress Oxide ink pads. They have a bit more of an open time or a wet time, so they do take embossing very well. So heating up the tree is a larger area, so you've just got to be a bit more patient, and because you've got more plastic powder, it just takes a little bit longer, and just putting a clear coat on top of it. So all these chipboard pieces should be available in my store. If there's any chipboard in my store that actually says sold out on it, there may be a reason for that. There may be I haven't caught it and put it back in stock. I do make and manufacture all the chipboard pieces myself with a machine I own. Sometimes my machine has hissy fits and needs to go in for maintenance. My machine is 12 years old, so sometimes it has it's coming into its teenage years, and as you know, teenagers, yeah, well, they like to chuck hissy fits. That's what I call it when it breaks down anyway. So don't hesitate to contact me if you see something that is out of stock on the website, especially a stencil, a foam stamp, a piece of chipboard, or the white mixed media cardstock. We can certainly produce more. It just depends on if my machine's in for maintenance. If the stencil's out of stock, it may mean I'm waiting on stencil plastic, etc. So just pop in an email what you'd like, and we can certainly look after you.
My daughter also sells paper napkins on the website. Unfortunately, that's the only product. When it goes out of stock, it is out of stock. So again, I am using the oxide ink pad. I can't remember the colour and I can't read it on the screen. Excuse me, it's a really dark green one, could be Lucky Clover. Using that to stick the clear embossing powder on top, just to give us another colour. So we can make custom words as well while I'm just doing the rest of this heat embossing. We can do custom words on our website. You just need to email us and ask what you'd like. We're only limited by trademark infringements or copyright, so we've got to be a little careful in those areas, but usually we're pretty good. We can make just about anything. Only limited by my computer skills. Some days it's better than others. So just heat embossing the words, and I think we're nearly done with all the heat embossing. As I said, I did want to put together a lot, so I grabbed this little tray out. I put some die cuts in the front. I am using the Reject Shop collection from last year. So I decided to put all my little pieces in the tray, and then I can easily flick through them. So I'm very indecisive when I card make, so I apologise if I'm shuffling papers around and die cuts and can't make up my mind. So this is the 6x6 paper pad from the Reject Shop as well, from 2019 collection. So I've got my round circle dies, so I thought it would be fun to do some die cutting as well. And then I can use the frame. I was going to put the circle up on the edge of the bit of paper, and then I thought, well, why don't I cut it out in the middle, and then I can utilise the two pieces. So you'll see that as the video goes. So I settle on this striped piece, which looks really cool. In the actual video, all I do is sort of get an arrangement of where I want my pieces to go, and I put them aside, and that's all that happened to them in 2019. And then in December 2020, I finally stuck them all together. So if they do look a little bit different from the way they look in this video, I do apologise. They did sit in my craft space for 12 months, and a couple of little die cuts got legs and walked away. So just trimming down some paper, I'm just using all 6x6 white card bases. I will admit, and I freely admit, card making is not my forte. I'm getting there. I find little things freak me out. I'm more happy on a double-page scrapbook layout, a big canvas, or in my art journal, little things. I don't know, I think I try to shove too much on them. I don't know what it is. But I'm getting better with card making. I do think I try to shove too much on there. So some of these cards do have a lot of embellishments on them. So there's a tip as well. So I made these 6 cards in probably about an hour and a half all up time-wise. So you can actually bulk make cards if you've got everything prepped and ready to go. And that tray worked fantastic. I could hold all my little bits. I'd grab it and sort of go through it if I decided I wanted a piece, and it sort of kept my workspace tidy as well. So here I'm just cutting down that bit of paper, so I'm going to utilise the scrap I cut the hole out of, which looks really cool. I do that twice on these cards. I actually don't like to throw anything out. I am the world's worst crafter. I will keep the smallest, tiniest little piece of paper. I am dreadful. So it's great to be able to use every little piece up. So there I'm cutting just a little bit of the red stuff, just slightly bigger than the circle, because I did not need it to be as big, and I could save the rest of the bit of paper. I told you I'm a scungy crafter. Well, not scungy, but I like to make my supplies go a long way. So this one's using the Holly Jolly Christmas. And the embellishments in this collection were just beautiful. There were some pinks and reds and greens and sort of more of a, not a pastel, but not bright colours. It was sort of jewel, what we call jewel tones. So that's sort of that in-between colour. So it made them very easy to work with. What I tend to do when I do my cards is I don't stick anything down to the base until I've moved it around 150 times. No, seriously, some of these cards got moved around 150 times. And I sort of layer up the chipboard with the embellishments. If you are making a lot of Christmas cards, go ahead and colour up a lot of chipboard. If I had to stop and colour the chipboard for each card base, I think I would have lost momentum. So I chose embossing powders that would go with the colours of the paper, heat embossed a bunch of chipboard, and then they were just there as ready embellishments to use. I do that quite often, is if I'm making a bulk batch of something, I will colour them up with colours that will match, and then any ones that I don't use go in my box and they're pre-coloured for next time. So this one's quite cute with the red on the background. So I'm happy with them. I put them aside. I do like to think about them a little, and well, I thought about them for 12 months, didn't I? Yes, that was quite funny. These got lost in my pile of craft for a little while. Life's just been crazy lately, and getting back to doing videos is something I want to do on a regular basis. Not sure why my computer is making noise at me. So I do change out that background paper. The other tip is also, as you buy chipboard pieces, you don't have to use them as you buy them. I often cut them into smaller pieces if the original piece will not work for what I want. So don't hesitate to cut up your chipboard pieces into several pieces so that you can best utilize them. And some of the sheets we sell, you do need to cut up because they are sold interconnected with tiny little bits of chipboard. These Christmas ones are mostly sold individually. But if a chipboard piece isn't working solid, you may as well cut it up into several pieces and make it work that way for you than not use it at all. So don't feel you have to use it as you bought it in that package. So all these chipboard pieces are available on my website, which is basically the same as my YouTube channel, scrapbookingencraft.com.au. We are hoping in 2021 to have a lot more videos showing you different ways to use our projects. We have exciting news, and hopefully we'll have some other designers and people making lovely projects with our chipboard stencils, foam stamps, paper cutouts and napkins. So just grabbing the sticker book, I decided to grab some stars. Unfortunately, when I put this card together, I had the stars in the wrong spot and I managed to cover them up, and only one star survived, but that is okay. Still looks really good. I have loads of paper and die cuts left over, so I could have made more cards. I just decided to stop at 6. I believe I had chipboard left over as well. So it's fun just to flip through the papers and see what works and what suits. I wanted to make sort of a range of different cards, so sort of not all the same, but using the same sort of elements and the same papers. I love using these circle paper cuts. They were fun to use. Just because it added another dimension and added more pattern paper layers, without adding a lot of bulk as well. So I cannot wait to send these cards out to their owners in December. I've also got all my little dies in that corner of that tray as well, but I end up only using the one size die, which is just a circle. I'm not sure of the size off the top of my head. So as you can see, I do procrastinate quite a bit, and this is sped up 3 times. I just, yeah, cards are, not my, I'll freely admit, not my forte. They're not the thing I enjoy doing. Yes, I will make them, but I'm much happier on a bigger project. But I can't always do big projects. It's nice to push yourself. I've actually purchased a couple of small art journals to force myself to work small. I don't know what planet I was on when I bought those. I don't know. 2021 is going to be the year to challenge myself, to get me out of my comfort zone. And this Merry Christmas was just not fitting. I had to move several things around until I got it to fit, just because I wanted to use the bells because they were cute. I wanted to have the big poinsettia there. I like the bottom. Often I like parts of the card and then certain pieces won't work, so I'll fiddle and fiddle and fiddle, and this is where I had to cut a holly piece into about 4 pieces. I just wanted little bits of the sprig to stick out from the bell, and as the solid piece it just was not working. And here I go cutting again. So I found the best scissors to cut the chipboard with. All our chipboard is cut from 1.8mm box board, so it's quite thick. So I've got a pair of Tim Holtz tonic scissors. They are the best thing to cut chipboard with. They are really robust. Don't go and grab your fancy fussy cutting scissors and chop up your chipboard, because you might wreck them. So those Tim Holtz scissors are quite robust, and they are an investment, but they are worth their weight in gold when you are using a lot of chipboard. Another card down. So each card I started with, I sort of chose my main elements first, which were the sort of the chipboard pieces, the larger chipboard pieces. And that's what I tend to do with most projects. I will find the largest piece that I want to work with, and then I will start sort of going down to the medium pieces, and then I'll add and sprinkle in the smaller pieces. So I know I want to use the Joy to the World. I just didn't know how to. On this card, I moved this paper around several times. I was like, ooh, that paper didn't go, let's pick something else. I sort of grabbed out one sheet of every paper to start with, and then I had a few favourites that I kept going back to and wanted to use. So I do have plenty of paper and that to make more cards or more projects. As you can see, I'm trying every piece of paper imaginable for this card. At the end, I got really indecisive. I was being terrible. So just cutting this frame down so I can see, I love that red, so I just want to see a bit more of that red, and I'm liking it even more. So a lot of the times we will make words all joined together, so we could make Joy to the World as one single piece, but I often like using the single words, and then as the crafter you can decide where you want to put them on your page. You can scatter them all around, you could stick them really close together so they look like they're stuck together, which is really cool, or you can scatter them over your page or card where you'd like. So just sorting through the embellishments to find what I want to add to this card. It's hard when there's about over 100 embellishments in the pack, because I don't know what to choose. I did end up changing this one. As I said, I did lose a couple of the die cuts, because these were sitting around in my craft room and kept getting moved and dropped, and one stage it was just a big pile of mess and I had to go through this video and work out which bit goes where. This one ends up with a little letter and a bow on the side. When I'm adding chipboard, I like to overlap elements, so I like to have die cuts or pieces of paper overlapping the chipboard in a lot of cases, so it sort of ties them together and they don't look like they're floating just stuck on. The Joy to the World is not so bad because it's a word, but I do try to anchor it. So when I stick it finally down, the Joy is sort of anchored to the edge of that frame with the circle cut out, and then the World is anchored to the opposite end. And then the to and the are sort of spaced within that circle, so they look like they sort of belong. Does that make sense? I often overlap chipboard pieces with die cuts or with pattern paper or with different elements. I like to stick things under the chipboard to anchor them or over the chipboard to anchor them. It just depends on what look I'm going for. So this particular card was one of the last ones I did, I think. And again, here you'll see me anchoring the chipboard underneath a die cut. I find I don't like things floating around, and it's also been anchored on that piece of red banner that I cut as well. I don't know, I have a thing about my projects where I don't like things floating sort of in midair. It's just something that I do. Sorry about the buzz. I was trying to move something on my screen. It won't let me while I'm doing a voiceover. I love that saying at the end. So we're nearly to the end. This is the last card. Thank you very much for watching, and let me know if you do make some Christmas cards. I'd love to see them. If you tag any of our products that you load up on social media with Scrapbooking and Craft, I do search that tag regularly to have a squizzy at what you've been up to. Thank you very much for watching, and I'd love to know, love to see if you've made any of our projects. Thank you very much. Bye for now.